Hey, welcome to a video where today we're just going to be scaling Amnesia. And well, we're going to only cover two of the games here. We're going to cover Amnesia The Dark Descent and Amnesia Justine, the DLC for it. But yeah, hopefully you all do enjoy the video, and yeah, if you do like the content, make sure to give a little like and yeah, subscribe to the channel. Now to start off this section of the video, we're just going to start with the origins of these monsters, and to put it simply, there's like two alternate origins, or actually there's multiple. One of the origins is, of course, whether or not they are from the 30 Years' War, as mentioned in a note about local folklore, or they are also just Wilhelm and his men when this cutscene happens.
What's happening? Oh, feels like my chest is going to burst. My God, Wilhelm, do something! Except we're not getting out of here. How can you say that? Alexander, you piece of shit! Let us out of here!
That they are possibly turning into the Gatherers, which, yeah, does support Wilhelm and his men becoming these creatures. Now, to get into the hacks of these creatures, including the K-Nurk and the Servant Grunt and Brute, to put it simply, the K-Nurk apparently comes from the other world. According to a note, it's mentioned that its physiology is required for Weir's tonic. Now, obviously, according to Frictional Games, in a blog post from 2010, the Servant Grunt and Servant Brute were also explained to have been possessed, mainly the Servant Grunt, but the Servant Brute is also implied, which does imply both of them have a degree of immortality due to their physiology being similar to the K-Nurk, which, yeah, gets quite confusing. Now, the only other hacks that the creatures actually have is blatantly just immunity to poison, as according to Alexander, him and his men were perfectly okay despite the fact that the sewers were in fact poisonous. Plus, I mean, if you play the game, you know about the fact that a brute just hides in there, so there's also that, but that's about it for hacks. Now, for AP, we're going to start out with the K-Nurk here, as it's easily the weakest when it comes down to AP. And as we'll see in the image soon, or I mean the video, we're going to see that it took around 6 hits for it to destroy a wooden door. So it was actually around 5 hits, but the calc for it normally is around wall level plus through violent fragmentation, but it took around 5 hits, so divided by 5, still around wall level, but as you can tell, we're going to next get into the Servant Grunt here, so let's get into his AP. Now, if we do the math with the Servant Grunt there, as we can tell, it took around 3 to 4 hits, which normally it was wall level plus, but because it took around 3 to 4 hits, that will only get it around to the wall level ranges, which, yeah, dividing that, that's all it really gets. But yeah, let's move on to arguably the strongest when it came down to the monsters in the original game, aka the Servant Brute. So let's do this. So as we heard in the clip there, the Brute was able to one-shot the said gates, which it even got knocked over through violent fragmentation based on how Amnesia does it. And if we look at the aftermath of it, yes, it does in fact show that the gate was in fact smashed to pieces. Now, according to Alexander, he does use wrought iron, so if we do the calc for that, it's around small building level, as unlike the Grunt, it was one hit. Plus, I mean, if you want consistency, the Brute can one-shot Daniel, unlike the Grunt, who takes more than one hit. So, yeah, the Brute is consistently around small building. And finally, let's get on to the Suitor. So as we saw in the clip there, it took around 1 to 2 hits to destroy the door. Now, going off the previous fact that at the time they did use wrought iron, which has already been established by Alexander, plus, you know, obviously Justine takes place around the same time, the calc would get it to around small building, depending on whether or not it was 1 or 2 hits. Both of them get to small building. One's just higher than the other, but yeah, and that's kind of it for the AP section. Next is just the speed. So this part of the video is going to be real short, as all I'm really going to do is just point out the fact that most monsters, excluding the K-Nerk, are all a lot faster than Daniel/Justine. It is confirmed they are meant to be a lot more faster, so yeah, that's what, peak human, superhuman, I guess. Not really much to it, but anyways, let's get on to our final section, that just being the shadow. So to start off this section of the video, during the events of the sewer section in Amnesia: The Dark Descent, it's implied that the shadow in fact killed the servant grunt, which does imply that the servant grunt is far below the shadow, which yeah, gets it to around wall level already. But to get it a fair bit higher, during one of the many loading screens, it does seem to depict the likes of the surrounding forest in Castle Brennenburg being covered by the shadow, which, doing the math for that, and covering a forest, or at least, devouring it, would be around multi-city block, which, yeah, is pretty impressive. But there is one more meta for this that gets it at its absolute highest. Now, the final way to scale the shadow is based on the fact that there are multiple statements that suggest it's as powerful as the universe, such as the description by Daniel in his note to his older self that the shadow is a living nightmare breaking down reality. In one of the loading screens, it also describes the shadow as the universe catching up with itself, and in another note by Daniel, he describes the shadow as having being beyond imagination, which you may think is hyperbolic, but in comparison to other things Daniel has seen, such as impossible geometry, endless deserts, and another world, aka the other world, it's not so unreasonable that these statements are in fact true. But yeah, that's it for the AP section. Now for the speed section here, there really isn't much for it, except mainly the fact that it lags behind on purpose, it seems, with the orb, because the shadow is summoned from the orb, so of course it lags behind the user. But if you really want to push it, at best you could probably say it's omnipresent, depending on if you want to use the universe statement, but really, there's not really much known about the speed, so take this with a grain of salt of however you want to put it. But yeah, that's just it for the speed section. Now for the final section of this video, we're going to talk about the abilities of the shadow, which obviously includes things such as darkness manipulation, as according to Daniel in his mementos, the darkness he describes is unnatural, which yeah, does imply that it definitely can control darkness. Now, another hacks of his that it does in fact have is the ability to basically absorb consciousness, as according to the ending with Agrippa, it's implied that Daniel was absorbed into the consciousness as the likes of Agrippa and Ware have both touched the orb, which also implies that they were absorbed into the consciousness. The shadow also happens to have a form it can take through its fleshy residue, and as we'll see in the following clip, we will see that yes, it can in fact disintegrate people at the bare minimum, or even possibly erase them from existence, as it does with Alexander in the following clip. Now, other hacks that may also be included is the impossibility of it inducing insanity or some kind of mind manipulation, as we'll see in the other following clip here.
Please, let me go!
Another hacks the shadow has is the ability to manipulate dreams and nightmares, as during the events of the game, Daniel had random nightmares coming in out of nowhere, which are likely linked to the shadow and the fact that he was connected to the orb. Now, the final hacks that the shadow has is in fact the immunity to battlefield removal and banishment, as Alexander during the events of the game does in fact attempt to banish the shadow with Daniel using the orb, which does in fact fail, as it just pisses off the shadow more, so they try a warding ritual, which involves killing many prisoners, which also in fact fails, which this leads to Daniel getting betrayed, and yeah, that's very much it for the hacks section. So yeah, hopefully you all did enjoy the video, and I mean, if you got any other suggestions for other videos I should in fact do, please drop them in the comment sections, and yeah, hopefully you all have yourself an amazing day. Peace out.